Merry meet, Annie here. I first learned of the sad story, the very sad, of Mohini, the white tiger, in Tara Brach's audio series, Radical Self-Acceptance. Here's a version of Mohini's story from the website iTrustICan.com. I just like the way the author on this blog wrote it. Mohini was a magnificent white tiger that lived in the U.S. National Zoo in Washington, D.C. in the 1960s. Mohini was a special gift presented to the U.S. President Eisenhower and the U.S. people. The zoo started a major project to build a large enclosure for Mohini, their star attraction. The enclosure would simulate Mohini's natural habitat as closely as possible. It would have many acres of lush forest with rolling hills and a large pond. It would be a playground for Mohini, for her to stretch and express her natural self as one of nature's most splendid and powerful creatures. Meanwhile, while the large enclosure was being built, Mohini was kept in a 12 by 12 foot cage with iron bars and cement floors. She would pace around ceaselessly in the cage while her eventual home was being built. Finally, the enclosure was completed and the big day of releasing Mohini into it had arrived. A large excited crowd had gathered to witness this much-awaited event. To everyone's surprise, instead of frolicking in joy in her new sprawling enclosure, Mohini headed straight for a perimeter wall at the enclosure's edge. At the wall, Mohini started to pace around in an imaginary cage, just like the way she had while waiting for the enclosure to be built. Mohini stayed in the tiny corner of this wall for the remainder of her life, oblivious to the freedom and the choices she had. So why am I sharing such a morbid story as part of this season of Samhain? Because we are deep within the season of water. And water teaches us to dream, to flow, to dare to be. Water teaches us about breaking free of patterns, eroding old ways, and carving new paths. It's time to dream of our lives without cages, whether they be the 12 by 12 physical cages, as the one that created Mohini's pacing pattern, or whether they be the restrictions that we place upon ourselves when we live within a false reality. In the season that encourages us to think about ourselves, to be in communion with ourselves, and could it be to put ourselves first, we do well to explore the patterning of our lives. In the season of the dark, we exist without borders, for who can say where darkness begins and ends? It's vast, it is infinite, it's full of possibility, and its width will be another journal post before too long. In this moment, in this time of water and increasing darkness, we're asked to take the first step towards the expansion of self that is the possibility of unlimited darkness, and to explore what of us is pacing within our imagined confines. We are all in cages of some sort. The first step is to acknowledge the limits we have set upon ourselves. In Tara Brach's 2012 post on her website, entitled Accepting Absolutely Everything, she shares this quote from Coral Rogers. "The curious paradox is when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." There's a great freedom beckoning to us on the other side of this season. We begin our journey by exploring the cage we have built around ourselves. It is as imaginary as the one at which Mohini spent the last years of her life pacing. Merry part.